Hello, this is Greg Mannion for the Addiction Stories podcast. I'm joined today by Jim, who we've never actually met before properly. Hello, Jim. Kind of friends on Facebook also. And yeah, so we're just going to dive straight in. First of all, just give us a minute or so of who you are, what's going on in your life at the moment, and then we'll go into the next little phase.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite. My name is Jim Moore. I live in on the island of Koh Samui, Thailand. I've been in Thailand for about 4 years. I run an online business. Well, I do a few different things. I have a few different startups that my wife and I run, but that's what keeps us here on the island. And yeah, I was intrigued. You mentioned you reached out regarding addiction, and man, I've had my fair share of use of cocaine, ecstasy, GHB, Adderall, methamphetamine. Just like my addictions more like they started when I went to the Philippines. So before I moved, I lived in the Philippines from 2009 to 2015, and I went there for work. I went there. I had a call center, so I had a little business that we had about 300 employees, and I went there thinking, man, I'm gonna go to Asia, set up my call center, get out, and I'll come back a few times a year. It didn't really turn out that way. Instead, I married a local celebrity who introduced me to a completely different world when it came to relationships and nightlife. And so I, very quickly, actually, it started out almost by accident. I would come home early from working in the Philippines. My work schedule is I'd work at night because I'd service our U.S. clients. And so I'd come home early around like 3, 4 in the morning, and she's with her friends, and she's doing ecstasy and whatever else. And that's what kind of like led my curiosity of like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? She says, well, come try it. Let me show you what it's all about. And I'll do anything once. And I tried that, and I tried ecstasy once, and ecstasy once turned into ecstasy once a day. Well, I wouldn't say once every day. There were a couple of months there throughout about a 3-year period where, maybe I had done it every day for a week or maybe more, but on average, I was doing it at least several times a week. And it just turned into a big social thing for me. It started like we go out to the clubs late at night, like 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, go to the clubs, come back when the sun's up, when the sun's rising. We had my condo. I had it completely like decked out for partying. So we had the blackout curtains, so no light would penetrate, because we'd have people start in the clubs at night and then come to my house, and we're doing ecstasy or cocaine or GHB or little weed, maybe if it was the end of the night and everyone was coming down. But it turned into a roller coaster of a ride.
All right. Well, what we're going to do, if it's okay, we'll go a little bit deeper into those things and where that kind of started, maybe, and what the reasons for it, etc., if we can understand them. But first, what I like to do on this little podcast, just to break things down kind of quickly, within a minute, right, a minute and a half, maybe, I'm going to ask you 10 questions, and they're not too deep or personal. They're just kind of quick fire questions. First thing comes to mind, shoot it out, and we go straight to the next question. Deal?
All right, let's do it.
Quick fire questions. And if you see me looking to the right, it means I'm just kind of reading these questions.
Okay, I got it.
I'm not being rude. So 10 questions as quick as you can. First thing that comes to mind. So what is your idea of perfect happiness?
My idea of perfect happiness is honesty and being connected.
Beautiful. Love it. Okay. What place would you most like to visit?
What place would I most like to visit? Well, Machu Picchu is on my list of places to go.
Okay, beautiful. Like it. What's your favorite color and why?
Blue, and it always has been ever since I was a child.
Okay, weird but nice. It's secure. Like
yeah.
It. One thing you like about yourself?
One thing I like, my intuition and my ability to problem solve.
Beautiful. Love it. Straight answers. Do you believe in God?
I used to, not in the sense of a man that sits in the clouds that judges you, but more in the sense of we come from the nothing that births everything and everything returns to, and that source, whatever you want to call it, God, deity, source. Yes, I believe in that. I don't believe in a person that sits in the clouds and judges you.
Beautiful. Gotcha. Which talent would you most like to have?
what talent would I most like to have? You know, I guess it'd be like, I like to be a little bit more calm and less anxious when it comes to getting in front of the camera and publishing content.
Okay.
Yeah, I get like once I'm already on, it's like I run with the punches. But pressing record and starting, there's so much anxiety around it that I just don't hit record.
Okay, but that's interesting. That's to do with the challenge as well, the 7-day challenge. One of the main things is getting people to do this, share what they're really feeling. You know, it's a beautiful thing. Thank you for the honesty. Okay, if you could be called by any other name, what would you like to be called by?
Well, so Jim is my name, but I don't know. I've had friends call me Maverick. My alias online is The Alchemist.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that really.
Okay. But I like The Alchemist. Okay. What is your favorite song of this week, or anything that comes to mind first?
Oh, my favorite song. Oh, I don't know.
Anything swimming around at the moment. I always have a song that just kind of drifts around.
So like I don't know the names of songs. Like I get into the like whatever's on. I like EDM if I want to like push something. I like Baroque classical if I want to get into doing something.
Yes.
But yeah, I got any names. Like my wife listens to her different TikTok songs. So when she's making her TikToks, so those are kind of running around in my head, but I don't know the name of the songs.
Okay, cool, man. What's your favorite swear word?
Fuck.
Fuck. God bless you. Okay, final question. What is your motto on life?
What is my motto of life? Oh man, that's more than just a single sentence response. What is my motto in life? That you are that which you seek. And on more than just the levels of, because you seek it, you already recognize it, but also the thing that you're looking for is actually you. Yeah. But we've been trained for so long to think that, you know, there's a God in heaven, pray and I'll go to heaven, or there's wars all around us, so pay your taxes and you'll be protected. Or so we've been trained to think that the power that we're looking for, the power that we need, is outside of us. And so we give that away so freely. And I find that when you recognize that, and it takes a little bit of effort to do this. But when I mentioned earlier to one of your questions about honesty, that there's a simple saying that the truth will set you free. Yeah. But oftentimes we run from the things that we're scared of because we judge what we don't understand. And our life is simply a reflection of the memories that we've had and our emotional attachment to those memories. And we then create narratives and stories about what those experiences mean if they've been unprocessed or if the trauma still exists. And so the problem is that when you're running from something, you're not really solving it, because you're still perpetuating it, because the thought of it is still there. It's still a response of, okay, I need to run, I need to hide, I need to not be me. But when you let go of the things that you're scared of, by actually letting them go, by talking to somebody and letting those things out in an environment of love, understanding, curiosity, intrigue, not judgment. Because all judgment is when you don't understand something. We as human beings, even animals are the same way. When we don't understand something, we judge it out of fear of survival, right? So out of fear of survival, we will create a judgment that will keep us stagnant, keep us safe, keep us in acknowledgement of what we already know. But when you go into that thing, whether it's trauma, whether it's pain, whether it's a painful experience, whatever it is, or whether it's a fear because you don't know what to do, when you actually go into it, and you go into it with understanding, and go into it with, why does this exist? Like, why do I do this thing? Or why do I believe this thing? Well, when you go into it, like, well, when was the first time that I actually believed this? Or when was it okay? When did I witness that it was okay to act like this? Or when was the first time? Like, go deep. When you go deep and you learn to process those, like, one, you can't be scared of something that you understand. And so if you take the time to understand you, and it's like the truth will set you free. So you got to let go of the stories you tell ourselves, because that's where addiction comes from. When there is a disconnection with either yourself and or others, we create something to fill in the void for being disconnected. And so that exhibits an addiction, and it can be of any sort of addiction. you know, like whether it's gambling or whether it's pornography or whether it's drugs or whether it's women or business or eating or you name it, gaming. It's like when you do something to try and fill that void because there is a lack of understanding, then you create addiction. And so I have an idea of addiction. And I think you can't punish the pain out of people. Like when you look at how we typically handle addiction, it's like, oh, he's doing himself. It's he's purposely making these choices. Well, really, what you're doing is a mental disorder. Like you are putting yourself into a repetitive loop, because we as humans, we live in repetitive loops, right? It's just kind of the way we act, the way we do things. But when we put ourselves into a repetitive loop of addiction, when there's not processing of, or when there's not healing, or when there's not overcoming the things that actually cause you pain to begin with, really, like we create a story of what that means. And when we can dissolve that story through compassion, through understanding, by putting yourselves in the shoes of even the person, let's say in the worst scenario, like in trauma and abuse, putting yourself in the shoes of the person that abused you. Because nobody wakes up, I don't believe anybody wakes up thinking, how can I fuck up today? How can I make the worst decisions today? Like we wake up thinking, how can I do the best thing for me? Even if those ideas or those values may not be in alignment with someone else, but nobody makes choices because they want to intentionally have a bad day or intentionally make bad choices. We all want what's genuinely right for us. We just may lack the clarity of how to achieve that. And we'll make a response or a reflex based on our way of seeing the world. And just understand the truth will set you free. You got to go into it to let it go.
Absolute gold. Absolute fucking gold. The last part, because I agree with you personally, but that's not the main point. But I love it because you've gone right to the core. It's really about avoiding. I believe in all the addictive behaviors. And like you said, it's a myriad. So mine was alcohol, but I still have a shitload, man. I know what I'm doing when I'm avoiding it again. I'm kind of, but what I don't do now, I don't beat myself up so much, I used to. And I'm not taking the one thing that was basically going to kill me. So now I can do the stupid little things that I do and survive. But that was beautiful. And on that kind of point now, that just leads us into exactly, my question, let's say there's 3 little questions here, and I think you'll be perfectly fine at going for it, which is basically what it was like before, to do with your story as well. I've got philosophies, but I'd like to hear what happened with you, what it was like before, what it is like now, and what was that catalyst for change. I'm really intrigued with everyone. What is the point of change? But let's go back as much as you're comfortable with to what was happening before the addictive behaviors, if you noticed it in an early age. Because to give you one quick thing about mine, I thought I was fine. As in I studied it a little bit in the 12-step program, why I started drinking. And there wasn't one point, but I did go all the way back to, like, obviously there was early life traumas and stuff, but 18, 19, I'd started to use alcohol quickly to just null the pain. It wasn't a big problem till late 20s. But just as an example, and that was one of the little points, if you like, and then you can go a lot deeper to the emotional side. But anyway, just giving you my little tiny snippet, but please go for it. Feel free to go anywhere you want to go.
Yeah. So as a child, like I was abused as a child, sexually, mentally, physically, like I was abused. And for the longest time, like I really felt like I was hated. I really felt like I didn't belong. I was put into institutions because I felt like my mom was trying to get rid of me, tried to put me into military school because I thought they were trying to get rid of me. And I held a lot of animosity for a really long time about this, because I felt like, how can a mother not love their child? And so there were even some other catalyst moments in my early adolescence when, my parents were about to get a divorce, where my mom came to the 4 of us children. I'm the oldest of 4. And I must have been, I was young, like 12, 13, maybe, or maybe younger. But we went to the store. And so in the car, my mom had asked us, so your dad and I are going to separate. We're going to get a divorce. Who do you want to live with? And so everyone in the car, like I went last, but everyone in the car, my sister says, Mom, I'm going to go with Mom. Justin, my brother, I'm going to go with Mom. My brother, Chris, I'm going to go with Mom. And then I was going to say Mom, but then I'm like, well, what about Dad? Like, Dad's going to be all alone? So I'm like, I'm going to go with Dad then. Right. So not to cause a problem, right. Just because I didn't want my dad to be alone. And that's a lot of pressure to put on a young child, on top of everything else that had happened that had been going on in my life. And so it just, it turned into a really sour relationship between my mom and I growing up. So like, even after like that divorce almost didn't happen. Instead, there was just a really poor relationship growing up, a lot of fighting, until they did get divorced later on after I'd moved out as an early adult. But during that time period, I really felt hated. Like my mom would tear up pictures. I'd get hot coffee thrown on me. I'd have yelled, scolded at, just not treated very nicely.
Yeah.
And so I always felt alone. I never felt like I was good enough. And that changed for me when I went to the Philippines, because as a I grew up as a Mormon boy, right? I was like super religious, like wear the tie. I went on a mission to Chile. I sold religion for 2 years, and I believed it. I believed it wholeheartedly, but at the same time, I believed it so much, but I didn't ever think I was going to get into heaven. I didn't ever think. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought that, how could heaven accept someone like me? And so even though I believed it, I went, and I wanted everyone else to believe it. So I put on this good show. I put on this. So my addiction didn't necessarily start with drugs. My addiction started with needing to fit in. And so because I didn't feel like I belonged, I wanted to wear the outfits, say what needed to be said, speak the language the way it needed to be spoken, and fit in, and make myself feel like, I'm on a pedestal, like I'm better than everyone else. And that just led further, because it's like, now I'm living a lie. So I'm living a way of life that I don't necessarily believe, but because I'm so deep, I better believe it. Right. And so that was hard enough. But then when I went to the Philippines, my life changed, because, up until this point in my life, I waited to have sex until I was a virgin when I got married. I've only been with one person. Then I went to the Philippines, and man, like, it was my first night in the Philippines. I'm there for a business deal. This banking arrangement came up and picked us up from the airport. We were doing a deal with them, but I'm on the Philippines. I'm on the ground for less than an hour, and I'm already in this strip club that I couldn't ever imagine something like this before. Going from the US, where I'd never been to a strip club there at this point, to now I'm like in this full like sex trade. You pick the girl, she comes and massages you, and like, it's just a completely different world of things. And so then I got into that. And so I from that evolved into little drugs. Like, I never wanted to I was always too scared of drugs, right? From like my upbringing of, they go through the DARE program, the, dare to say no to drugs, drug abuse awareness education or whatever. So like, I went through that as a child, and they went through all these different scenarios of what drugs do to your brain. And so I was always scared of ever doing drugs. And so maybe as a teenager, I had done drugs, I'd smoked a little weed, maybe 4 or 5 times as a teenager, had a really traumatic experience the last time I tried smoking. So I said, I'm never smoking again. And I didn't until after I came back from Chile. But so I smoked weed a few times. But now I'm in the Philippines, and it's holy sheesh. We've got, it's, you name it. It's like my drug of preference to start with was ecstasy, because it changed my entire perception of reality. Yeah. Like, from being able to like feel colors was something, being able to have an emotional feeling to the sound of music. There was like that to me was addictive, and I just kept going. And then because of the social environment, all of a sudden, like, I grew up unpopular, with no friends, isolated, always feeling abused, always feeling like I didn't matter, like I wasn't good enough, to all of a sudden now I'm in the Philippines and I'm the center of attention. Right. And so my whole dynamic of life changed, that I wanted to now fit in, and I didn't have to try anymore. So my whole addiction of fitting in went to the whole another level, because in the Philippines, when you're a foreigner, like they hold the door open for you. They, ma'am, sir, you, they respect you. And it's a whole different life in comparison to the US. So accelerate that with the use of drugs, because of the people we were in, with the groups of people we'd be hanging around with. It changed from ecstasy to, I have a whole nother story. This is a whole nother podcast in itself. It's a subject matter of a book I'm writing called Chasing the Devil, which is about, it's about the Philippines. And it started out as a little bit of drug use, turned into, I became a international drug dealer by accident. I was Yeah. So there was 2,000 kilos of cocaine that made its way to Philippines. It was coming from Colombia to Hong Kong. It gets stopped in the stores of Samar. This is in 2009. This cocaine goes overboard. And so there's 2,000 kilos now in the Philippines economy that's not supposed to be there. But the fishermen that like are getting the stuff that's washing up on shore, they have no clue what it is. They're like washing their clothes with it, like is it deodorant? What is it? So imagine a kilo of cocaine, which is something, upwards, $50,000, $60,000, you're picking up in the Philippines for, $20, $30. And so at the point when I got involved, like I was picking up for about $2,000, about 100,000 pesos. But I had a friend of mine that was a DJ that just said, I go to his condo one day, I was picking up some ecstasy, and I walk into his condo and he's like, hey, Jim, grab my backpack. And he's in the kitchen. He's got this, it looks like a bag of cake mix that he's pulling out of the microwave. And I'm thinking, why are you pulling dry cake mix out of the microwave? So I grab his backpack and he says, hey, pull it out. So I pull out this, it looked like a brick. It was like a book. And or I thought it was a book. It was a kilo of cocaine, but that it was still wrapped in the rubber and the tape and all that. But because it had gone in the ocean, it had been saturated with sea salt, right? So they were trying to like dry up the salt and try and make it usable. So he like asked me, he says, hey, do you know anybody that can get me 20 kilos of cocaine? Like he's got this deal with triads out of Jakarta, and he has a deal, 55,000 euros per key. And so I said, well, maybe I might know somebody, like doing business in the Philippines, your fair share of corrupt people and politicians. And so I started connecting some dots, and sure enough, dots were connected and a deal happened. And so the first deal happened. They took a kilo to Hong Kong, and they ended up saying, no, we don't want any more. They said it was because of all the sea salt, they couldn't use it for what they wanted to use it for. So I thought at the time I was watching Breaking Bad. So I'm like, okay, if Walter can make blue meth, and I realized it was just a TV show, but I'm like, if Walter can make blue meth, I'm sure that there's a way to fix the salt problem. So I went online and I found this website called Blue Light Forum. And I found out how to clean cocaine using acetone and hydrochloric acid. And so I said, well, let me try it. So I ended up getting another kilo. We ended up washing it. And we ended up selling that one back to through Brian's contacts. And sure enough, we're like, we want all of it that you've got. So we ended up doing this 22 times. And so by accident, I was like in the middle of all this. And my addiction now at this point was to the extreme where I'm no longer like trying to do drugs and like trying to like feel like a little happy moment. Like I'm completely addicted to injecting cocaine. And so like it was intense. It was insane. Like I never admitted to myself or could admit to myself I had an addiction. I always thought that, I'm not addicted. I just enjoy it. I can stop anytime. Well, then if I can stop anytime, then why don't you stop anytime? Yeah. Right. Like those weren't the thoughts that I was thinking. It was just justification that I'm not addicted. But here I am. Like I'm carrying a bottle. I would go to the pharmacy and I get a bottle of 50 cc unit of saline solution, little bottle with where you pull it from a syringe. Yeah. So I'd get that. I'd go mix that with an ounce of cocaine. I'd put it back into the bottle, and I would carry that little bottle in my sock underneath my jeans on one foot, and I would carry a needle on the other side, a little diabetic needle on the other side, and I'd be slamming cocaine multiple times a day, and so my addiction got so bad that at the time my wife's like my late wife, she died, but at the time she said, if you don't stop this, I'm leaving. And so I said, okay, well, she ended up injecting cocaine to show me how crazy I looked. And that was my last straw. I'm like, okay, I'm done. So I call my friend and I'm like, hey, I got to connect you guys. I'm out of this deal. Let me just connect you to my source. And so they started working the deal together until about a month after that, I get a phone call from the guy saying, hey, where's Brian? And I'm like, I don't know. I introduced you guys already. He's like, well, I've got 10 kilos of cocaine that he's told me to get for him. Now he's gone MIA. Where's he at? So I'm like, I don't know. It's not my problem. He says, well, it's your problem now. And I'm like, oh shit. Right. So I call Brian and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And he says, I don't know. The price just kept going up. It's ever since you're not involved. It's too expensive. I don't want to do it anymore. So I told him I'm done. He says, well, they think you're getting it from somewhere else. I think you need to communicate that with them, because now they've just told me that like I need to like make sure you pay your bills, because they've just told me it's my responsibility. And so he's like, I'll work it out. But then about a week later, I get a phone call from one of their guys saying, hey, turn on the news. And so I turn on the news, and he's been arrested for 10 kilos of methamphetamine, which cocaine isn't a drug in the Philippines, right? It's just, it was there because this whole thing. But now there's 10 kilos of methamphetamine, which is the drug used in the Philippines. And it was placed there by, it was an eye for an eye. Like, you fucked me on 10 kilos of cocaine, then a political figure with their vehicle parked his truck in his slot, even with government plates on the vehicle, with a Pelican case with 10 kilos of methamphetamine. He just, about a couple of years ago, his trial was finally over, got hit with double life sentence in the Philippines. So, yeah. So what was my catalyst for stopping? So I guess at that point, like throughout that, I was in a downward spiral. I was out of control. That right, like I was heavily addicted, and it wasn't just, now it's not just being addicted to drugs. Now I'm addicted to women, right? So like I've got, I'm going to different massage houses. I'm sleeping with her friends. It was just a big mess, and from that, just it turned into a massive. Well, she found out that I was cheating, and so when she found out, of course, I confessed, and so she goes off the deep end, runs away for a couple of days, comes back, and so we start doing meth together. So at this point, like I'd never done methamphetamine, but that was her drug that she chose at this point, I guess. And so to make her not leave, I just said I would do meth with her instead of have her go do it somewhere else by herself or with whoever else. So that was on September 12th, 2013, is when the first time I did methamphetamine. And that went on for 2 months. So now, like, we were doing meth every day, where like I had friends that, I say friends, like the people that we were doing drugs with were doing like a gram of meth would last them, 2 or 3 days. Here I am trying to get high off meth, and I'm doing 2 or 3 grams a day. And so I'm down, like normally I'm like 200 pounds, 195, 200 pounds. I'm down to like 165. We've been binging for multiple days in a row. To the point where, we decided that, maybe it's best if we just commit suicide. I hadn't been to the office for, almost about a month and a half. So my employees need to get paid. I'm trying to sell my business to my business partners. So because I realized I don't want the responsibility of 300 people and their families on my back. So especially in this state, I realized like psychologically, like I knew that I was fucked, right? Like I knew that I was weighing over my head, but I never thought that I could stop. And so then we started thinking of, alternatives of, okay, well, I've got life insurance. I've got 2 children. I'm worth more to them dead than alive. I just sold my business at this point to my business partner. Didn't really get the deal that I wanted because it was a forced sale. And so I'm extra depressed. And not only that, I've got a relationship that's falling apart, and we don't actually spend the time to process what had happened. Or even discuss or anything in regards to any of it. Instead, we just kept going deeper and deeper with drugs. And so instead of dealing with the emotion, we just cover it up with addiction. And we went hard for a really long time until finally we decided maybe suicide's the best thing to do. So I had a friend that worked at the hospital. I got 25 milliliters of fentanyl normally used on a regulator, right, in the hospitals. I slammed 25 milliliters of fentanyl. She took 360 milligrams of morphine sulfate, and that was so that we both would die. So for her, she was 3.6 times her lethal limit. I was 2.5 times my lethal limit. And so we thought this was it. It's over. We injected it, and she took hers. I injected mine. And instead, like I woke up 4 hours later. I thought she was dead. I looked to the side of me. Her jaw was like she looked horrible. We went to the hospital. They gave her Norcan, and she got confined for 4 days and recovered. So we decided, look, we're never doing that again. We're done doing drugs. We need to get out of here. So we sold the condo, getting ready to sell the cars. We bought our tickets. We're going to go back to the US. And then it's Halloween. And so her friends invited us out to go to a Halloween party. And so I was trying to tell her, please, let's not go out. I know what's going to happen. I know your friends. I know there's going to be drugs. Let's just, we leave on November 6th. Let's just wait it out another week. We'll go home. We'll go back to the US and everything's fine. Well, it didn't happen that way. She wanted to go out. So we went out, but she promised that we're not going to do any drugs. I promised no drugs, no drugs. Well, we get there, within 10 minutes, there's GHB. So she's taking too much GHB. She's about to pass out. She can feel it. So to make it not pass out, she takes meth. So now she's awake, but then she's taking too much meth. And so now she's trying to, like, it was just a mixture of meth and G, meth and G, meth and G, until that turned into a 2-week, well, almost a 2-week binge. So that binge lasted until November 12th. We missed our flight, obviously. And we ended up going back home. I had to go home because I needed to change. I needed to get some fresh clothes. And my son was there, right? So my son was living with me at the time. We had babysitters and nannies that would take care of them. And I never wanted to do drugs in front of them. That was kind of like my justification that, well, if I'm not doing it in front of them, it's not that bad. I mean, that's just naive talk. I mean, children are absorbent. They observe everything. And I walk in the door and he hugs my leg and he says, "Daddy, don't you know that I love you?" And so just, it broke me down, broke my heart. And I thought, why are we doing this? So we go back, I go to pick her up, bring her back to the condo. And we're going to leave the next day. We're going to go to this city called Tagaytay in Philippines. It's this volcano city. And well, that didn't quite happen. So we got home. We were going to do that. But then the problem with doing drugs it was meth, coke, GHB, ketamine, ecstasy, over and over in this loop for almost 2 weeks. And my body hurt. Like, it physically hurt. Like, it was not like there were pains in my leg that, like, I couldn't touch, that it hurt. But even if I tried to, like, touch it where it hurt so it would stop hurting, it was like inside my bones where I couldn't touch or something, just an unsoothable pain. And so that was causing frustration and irritation. We're both fighting, right? Because they were obviously irritable. We haven't slept. We know that, we're just, the come down, the crash is horrible. Yeah. And so we both have this conversation of, well, let's commit suicide again. And so this time I realized, look, morphine didn't work. Fentanyl didn't work in super doses. Well, this time I know what will work. And so I'd been addicted to coke for so long. So I know that the lethal limit of cocaine is 1.1 grams for a 180-pound adult. I'd never gone that far. The most I'd ever done was a 0.4. The most I ever did once was a 0.7, but the convulsions are so intense that it's unbearable. Like, there were times like I thought I was going to die, that like my heart stops beating or I stop breathing, and just telling myself, well, I guess that's it. I guess this is how I'm going to die. To like my heart starting to beat again and me breathing again, just overdoses that are just mind bending. But so like I know what not to do with cocaine because I did it for so long. So I realized, okay, if we're going to commit suicide this time, let's get enough to make it game over. And so I got 8 grams of cocaine. And so I injected 5 grams of cocaine that day. There's no reason why I shouldn't be dead. She injected a gram of cocaine, or I injected a gram of cocaine into her. And what ensued instead of death was a nightmare. I had an out-of-body experience where, well, at the time I didn't understand it as that. I just, at the time when it was happening, I thought that I was watching what was happening in like third person, but I had like no emotional attachment. It's like watching watching television, right? No matter how angry or sad or neutral I am, the TV is going to keep playing on. Right. So it was kind of like that experience. I started watching what was unfolding next. And it turned into a nightmare. So what happened is there's 2 things that happened. There's what I remember happening, but then there's what happened based on the CCTV footage, because we had cameras installed in our condo everywhere because we'd partied a lot. I never wanted people to come in and steal our stuff. So it was I always had cameras everywhere. So the cameras show something completely different. than what I remember. But what actually happened, again, it was about almost 4 hours. I had a convulsion. I'm passed out against the door for nearly 4 hours. I wake up, I get on the bed, and now like I'm trying to wake her up or trying to do something, but I'm doing it in a very animalistic way. I'm doing like I've got my hands and legs on both sides of her, and she wakes up, and her niece is yelling, freaking out. She's like in the bedroom. I can't even understand what she must have been perceiving or understanding, but she tries to pull Aiko or pull my late wife out from underneath me. She runs out of the bedroom, and here I am trying to communicate, like, I don't want to die alone. Like, I want to die with you. Don't leave, but I don't know how to say this. So my first response is I grab the drawer underneath the entertainment center, and I smash my head with the drawer, trying to, like, I can't communicate it, but if I can just show you, like, I'm in chaos, don't leave, maybe you'll stay. Well, that obviously was irrational thinking, because she did not stay. She ran out, and she ran into the hallway, out the condo, into the corridor near the elevator, and I ran in to chase her. When I went to go chase her, I grabbed her, and we both fell to the ground, and I'm shaking her like, why are you leaving? Don't leave without me. Don't die without me. And instead I hear a yell down the hallway, and it's her niece yelling down the hallway saying, Jim, stop it. You're killing her. And no, I'm not. And so, but I look down, and there's blood everywhere. And so I think, oh crap. Well, if she's dead, then I'm going to die too. So I started smashing my head into the ground. I've got this like massive scar you can see going from here to here. I started smashing my head into the ground and the tile floor to try and split my head open. That didn't work. I ran into the kitchen. I ran back into the condo. I called my ex-wife, the mother of my children, and I said, thinking that she's just down the hallway. Really, she's in Utah, pregnant, can't fly. And so I call her. I'm like, hey, you need to come get Preston. He's at the park. Aiko's dead, and I'm going to kill myself. Actually, I think Aiko died, and I'm going to kill myself. Were the quote that I said. And so I grabbed some steak knives, and I start to stab my chest. I've got like these 5 wounds here where I'm trying to get the knife to go through my rib cage, but I couldn't get the knife to go through. So then I slit my throat. And so I took the knife, and I'm trying to slit my throat, but I can't get it to go anywhere. So I go into the room where she's got these blades and scissors and shears for cutting and making clothing. So I grab this X-Acto knife, and I slit my throat to the point where it starts bursting out of me. And I realize I'm dying. And so I get on the floor, and I'm crawling, and I can't even, there's so much trauma, physical trauma, that had happened in such a short amount of time that I can't see straight anymore. I've got this like tunnel vision that I can only see what's happening right in front of me. There's blood everywhere. And each time I breathe, every time I'm moving, I'm just leaving blood going into the hallway. But I'm trying to get to her because I want to die next to her. And anyway, again, what happens later, about 4 hours later, I wake up, and I'm in the hospital, and I'm handcuffed to the bed. They're putting stitches in my head and my throat and my chest. And there's a guy there. His name is Nathan, a person that I used to be friends with, but now he's we're at that point, is like a business rival. And I said, where's Aiko? And he says, Jim, she's gone. So I get arrested. I'm processed. I get to the jail. And granted, I'm still very high on cocaine. Like, I'm still like, there's my sense of awareness isn't back to normal by any means, but I'm in jail. And within that's the following morning, the family comes to the jail. And so at first, she's got a brother, all half brothers, but she's got a brother, and he is pissed off. Obviously, he's extremely mad, but his point is, Jim, I know you love her, and I know this was an accident. I want you to go home and be with your children. But then the lawyer steps up, and the lawyer's like, but first, give us everything you own. So I'm thinking, I don't want to go home. I want to die. So I'm trying to think, how could I finish this? How could I die? So I agree. I said, okay, I'll give you everything I own. Because in the Philippines, the legal system is that the people that you aggrieve, it's their responsibility to prosecute you. And so if they don't, then there's no case and there's no whatever. So the government doesn't get involved unless there's the person that has been harmed comes forward. So for them, they said, look, we want you to go home. We don't want to press any case. We know you love her. We know it was an accident. We know you love your kids. Just go be with them. So I'm thinking, okay, I keep loaded guns in both my cars. So if I can, so I get them to agree that I'll give you everything I own. I'll give you the combination to the safe. I'll give you the keys to the car. I'll give you, they wanted all of her stuff, right? Because they had a lot of expensive handbags and, you know, luxury things and jewelry. And so they wanted all of that. And so I said, okay, I'll give it all to you, but let me be the one to give it to you so that I'm there when I give it to you. The chief of police agrees. And so I get taken back to the condo. So as I'm at the condo, I tell them that, look, there's a loaded gun in the car. And so I've got two cars. I've got an X5 and a 3 Series. And I tell them in the 3 Series, there's a loaded gun in the glove box, knowing that there's actually a loaded gun in the X5 also. But if I can tell them that there's a loaded gun in there, I made sure, look, it's registered. There's no problem with it. But just so you know, I'm not going to turn these cars over to this new family. I'm going to give the guns to the police, right? So the police are there and they're taking the guns. And as I'm looking, everyone's there. I'm unhandcuffed at this point. So I've just been in the condo, unpacking, giving things to them. I'm downstairs in the parking garage. I'm not wearing handcuffs. So I go into the X5, which is sitting to the left of the 3 Series. I get into the passenger side door. I sit at the seat. I pull open the glove box. I look at the gun. It's loaded. I can feel it. There's this little like feel on where you run your finger. You can tell that it's loaded. So I could feel that it's loaded. And I put the gun to my head and I pulled the trigger. But it didn't go off. It clicked. It just misfired. So like now I'm frantically trying to reload this gun. But the problem is that the round is jammed in the slide. So I can't get it to go back. And then I've got a laser grip on the gun. So as I'm trying to like undo this, there's a laser that's going straight out, which obviously got their attention because they came into the X5 and they threw me to the ground, broke my rib, broke my wrist, put me back in jail. And I spent the next 18 months there going like until finally the case was dismissed and charges were dropped. But 18 months in jail in a third world country where I met my wife now. Actually, we met prior to me going to jail. We met once before, but we never knew each other until she started messaging me the day that everything had happened. I had a lot of hate mail of like, I'm going to kill you. How dare you? So a lot of her fans were just furious. And so she was one person that messaged me politely that day of, you know, I hope you're doing okay. It's a horrible experience, but, you know, wish you the best. But I didn't really think anything of it. And then, but like a few months later, I get to I'm at the main jail. And so I become friends with the warden and the other guards and had some privileges. Like it really didn't, it was jail, like in the physical location, but like the way that they treat people that are foreigners or treat people that are that have money, it wasn't jail. And so it was a really strange, interesting, and eye-opening experience. But what it showed me though is it showed me that you can't punish the pain out of people. That you've got more than 70% of the inmate population are there for nonviolent drug offenses because they don't have another choice. They lack resources. They lack a job. They lack an opportunity that lets them do something different. And so because of their lack of choices, these are the choices that they have to choose from. So human trafficking, drug trade, organized crime, that these are the choices that they have because they don't have others. And so that's been kind of a pivotal idea that sparked what I do now. I mean, I'm in e-commerce now, but our goal is over the last 4 years, I've been in advertising for 16, but in the last 4 years, we learned how to sell anything. Like we find products from China, we build a whole marketing campaign around it, we sell it to the US, and we build social media. And it's a duplicatable process where we have 21 people on our team. We have people on our team that we've taught how to do e-commerce, so they have their own stores now. So our goal is that we're building a training curriculum around how to get started and to give it to the Philippines. This course doesn't cost anything. It's a free course, but it's a course that you'd spend $5,000 or $10,000 for. It's a course that's value packed that teaches you how to get started from A to Z. So that my goal is that if we could actually my goal goes a little bit deeper than this. So in the Philippines, you've got President Duterte, right? So you've got this guy, this president that declared a war on drugs in 2016. More than 15,000 people have been reportedly murdered, extrajudicial executions that the president has sanctioned. If you are a drug user, a drug pusher, a drug dealer, a drug manufacturer, if you are related to the supply chain of drugs as either the consumer or the supplier, there's a death warrant on your head. And so over 15,000 people have been murdered. I get what he's trying to do. He's trying to solve a problem, but you can't do that at the cost of human life. The way that he's doing it is extreme because you can't punish the pain out of people. But what you can do is that if you want to solve the drug problem, like the way that I think is I'm a problem solver, right? Like I think that's just the way I think. I'm always thinking. And so I look at how do you solve the problem of drugs in the Philippines? Well, you've got to first look at why does it exist? Well, it exists due to corruption, right? It exists because of secrets, and you can't fight something you can't see. So I can't solve the problem by fighting corruption, because if you fight corruption, you're still giving your energy to corruption. So if you want to solve the problem, you've got to create a solution that creates a new set of choices for somebody that is in that situation. And so I look at it as teaching people how to do e-commerce. As we continue to grow our brands, we'll bring manufacturing to Philippines also. Right now it's in China. But our job or our goal is to provide opportunity, jobs, resources, training to those that otherwise have options such as sex trade, human trafficking, drug trade, organized crime, where these are their choices. Well, you could stop it if you gave them new choices. And so it's I wouldn't have ever wanted to go to jail, but going to jail, it changed my life. It changed the way I see the world, the way I engage with it.
Within that part though about the jail, so is that the point when you completely stopped, but it also gave you a totally different perspective on what was going on in the country and inside you? What was that thing there?
So actually, I wanted to stop when I was in jail, but I became really close with the warden, and so I wanted some favors. And so my favors were that I wanted my computer so I could write my book. It's called Chasing the Devil. I wanted to start writing an outline for it, and then also I wanted a cell phone, because I wanted to be able to talk to my family and whatever. So he agreed to not give me a cell phone. He gave me a PS Vita, so a little PlayStation handheld PS3, essentially, it's just a Game Boy, but it could connect to the internet. So I had games, I had Facebook while I was in jail. But for that, he wanted me to tell him where all the drugs were in jail. There's more drugs inside jail than there were outside. And so my goal, my thought was that, okay, if I give you the information, well, at least this way I'll die, because I've been trying to commit suicide, but I'm still at this point, still very much suicidal. That I thought it was my way out. Okay, I'll give up the people. They'll know it's me. I'll die. Let me just get out my story first, so my kids hear my side of the story, and I'll end it. But it didn't end that way. What ended up happening is, so 10 people, the ones that run the drug flow of drugs into the jail, from police officers to inmates to the hierarchy within the jails, when we had them all shut down, like to where it was held, how it was coming in, how they were communicating, where the cell phones were, all that. And so in about 6 months, the jail was drug free for the first time in its history. And so it remained that way until I left. But I donated a lot of stuff to make that happen. I had cell phone jammers, but I had a call center in the Philippines, right? So there were certain things we had to prohibit from the use on the inside of our facilities, such as cell phones and whatnot. So we had cell phone jammers to prevent data exchanges. And so I donated my cell phone jammers to the jail. Only thing is that because I'm the one that set it up, I'm able to bypass my SIM ID so that my connection still works, even though guards and whatever else doesn't. But so I had to access the internet. But during that process, I had to get close to people that were doing it. And so I don't want to say as addicted. I may have been even at one point more addicted than I was on the outside, but without fear of ever getting caught again, because I'm already inside. But I was doing a lot of it on the inside for that first 2 months that I was in there, 3 months that I was in there, until finally it dawned on me. Once it was done, there was no more left. And once the severity of what had happened actually had a chance to sink in. I mean, like, I haven't touched it since. I haven't, like, I got out of jail on May 28th, 2015. And so, like, I mean, I smoke weed every once in a while, but I see life differently. That but so what was catalyst for me? It wasn't even going to jail. It was being able to share my secrets, being able to share my traumas, and not just a one-way street, not just sharing what things had happened to me to perpetuate victim consciousness, but to also share things that I had done, so that to create vulnerability. But what happens is when you share the things that you're afraid to talk about, whether it's your own traumas or whether it's your own pains or your own judgments or whatever, when you actually share those things, not out of fear of being caught, but out of genuine love and genuine exhaustion for holding on to it for so long. That when you get tired of being tired, and the things that you fear, you go into by acknowledging them, by being honest with them. And that means not just honest with yourself, because we have a way of creating our own stories to benefit us, but to share it with a third party, share it with somebody else that allows them to, I mean, look, we're all part of this human experience. We all think we're different when we're very much all the same. And all of us require human connection. And when we lack that connection, genuine connection, then we create these divides. And so the way that you create even stronger bonds is even post-trauma. So once trauma has occurred and when you've been holding on to it or whatever for so long, once you decide to let it go, that's painful, because you've got to acknowledge it again, and then you've got to talk about it again. But then when you share it out of curiosity, when you share it out of intrigue, when you share it in an environment of love and support, you no longer feel like you have to hide. And when you don't have to hide, then that in and of itself has enormous healing abilities too. But when you don't have to hide, then look, your mind is a finite resource, right? You can only concentrate on so many things. You can only do so much. You only have what you have. But when your resources are used on things that you're trying to avoid, then you're still giving mental resource to those things. When you let go of them, it's like, for me, like trying to hide for so long, hide who I am, or hide my trauma and my pain, that when you can let those things go, you realize that nobody really judges you as much as you judge yourself. Everyone's busy judging themselves. When really, when you let those things go, it's self-healing, because you stop giving mental resource to things that no longer serve you. I kind of illustrate it as like, the old school switchboards, like television or telephone switchboards. You've got like the wall, and you've got a cable, right? I think of the mind as like that, right? So you've got switchboards and you've got cables, and you can put those cables into whatever you want, and you can put as many of those cables into as much as you want. But if you're using that to hide something, then you're creating a very self-sabotaging loop, because no matter,
only going to build up inside.
Yes, you got to let it go. So the way you got to let it go is you got to forgive yourself. And the only way you stop judging yourself is you got to understand it. And the way you understand it is you got to go deep within yourself, and then try and take yourself out of your shoes. And what's it like from their perspective? So for me, that was extremely healing. Is when I stopped believing in the institution of religion, right? So when I stopped giving my energy away to that, when I stopped believing in the institution of governments, not like I'm anarchist, but I recognize that you don't need anyone else to survive. Like, we create beliefs to try and fit in. When you're in control, you create the life you want. Like, I didn't just like live here accidentally, right? It's a process. When you actually, there's a fundamental rule of the universe, is that if you keep going, if you don't give up, eventually you'll get there. And same thing with if you have that same determination with self-development, with actually understanding, like, why am I the way that I am? Like, realistically, You grew up, you were given a name, a family, a community, an upbringing, a religion, an education, a financial system, and you were told that this is who you are. And so, well, likewise, there's 5,500 religions in the world, and all of them believe that they're the right one, right? You have multiple countries, hundreds of countries in the world, and they all believe that they're the best country. And they all go to war with each other to defend their beliefs and their ideals and their ideologies and dogma. When really, why do you believe that? Why do you? It's like we are trained creatures. We grew up from our grandparents teaching our parents, to our parents teaching us, to us teaching our children, and really, like, it's like the blind leading the blind. Unless it's like what's that saying? There's this whole new age thought of like everything's a choice, but I believe that's true once you recognize that there's a choice to begin with.
Well, this is it, and it goes back to the addiction, because for years as well, and many other people talk about this when I'm in these conversations, if they don't have a choice, don't have a choice, and then something breaks, some kind of catalyst happens, and then when you're exactly right, you have to dive in there to realize there is a choice. It took me about 6 months after getting sober, and I was like, okay, I have a choice. I wanted that, let's put it about 2 months in, I wanted that bottle of wine one day in the afternoon, but I realized I didn't need it. A simple fucking sentence. I wanted it, but I didn't need it. In the past, I fucking need it. I need it. It was a mild little change, but it got me through to then, having the choice, because I truly believed I didn't. And I see it a lot in people, and the part of these interviews and podcasts is to tell people that, man. So it's really powerful what you're saying. Really powerful.
Yeah. So I guess it's the key to it is, one, forgiveness. Yeah. To not be so hard on yourself, and to take it one day at a time. Right? Like don't take it. Like if you're at the beginning stages of wanting to be sober, the idea of being sober can be daunting, especially if the idea of, oh shit, I've got to be sober for a year, 5 years, 10 years. Yeah. The idea is like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get there? No, you're sober today. You may not be sober tomorrow, but you're sober today. And don't fool yourself, because we're good at fooling ourselves. We're good at convincing ourselves into doing something. So don't trick yourself into falling, and just take it for one day at a time. Like, what can I do today to be strong, and what do I have to avoid? What's my superpower, but what's my kryptonite? What's going to take me down? And so I've got to treat my addiction the same way. Like, there's certain things I need to avoid, because as much as I hate the idea of cocaine and meth and all these drugs, that, man, like I never had a bad experience until somebody died. And so my staying away from it is purpose driven, not because I don't have the craving, because, man, like I love drugs. I just choose to stay away, and I choose to avoid scenarios where I know they'll be. And I live a relaxed life, because, man, I've lived a fast paced party life, and I know where that gets me. And so I prefer just open, honest, slow, calm, and one day at a time.
Perfect, fucking perfect advice. Final thing, would you say there's anything there within a spiritual connection, or did that help in any way? Did you have anything like that? Do you have anything like that now?
Yes, absolutely. So my life I take very spiritually. That I look at life, regardless of what you believe, is merely hopeful perspectives. There's no way of knowing. We can create a certainty, or the want, or the drive, or the desire to have something be this way, but there really is no certainty. It's just hopeful perspectives. And since there is no certainty, I take this each day sacred. It's a sacred journey. And so, do I always get it right? No, man, I fuck up a lot, and I learn from my mistakes, but I try not to take it so seriously. But again, that's easier said than done. That's an ideal scenario. I wish I didn't take things so seriously, but like when I get stressed, man, like I'd like my addiction for needing to get things done. Like I may not go out and do coke or meth or GHB or women or any of that anymore, but like I'm definitely addicted to my computer screen. And so like when when something needs to get done, like I'll shut down, like windows are down, doors closed, and I'm in front of my computer until whatever I'm working on is done. And so I realized too, that's an addiction as well. That I need to get to the root cause of that, but I'm in the middle of it at the moment.
Okay. Well, fucking amazing, because you covered so many subjects and a few questions, but you pretty much got there with all of them, man. Definitely an intense story, but you've seemed to have come through with extreme knowledge though of yourself. That's what I get. You seem to really understand all these things, which is really impressive, man.
Well, the way I look at it is that when you, like you mentioned, when a catalyst happens, you know, typically when somebody understands something new, it's not because they went out in search of something new. It's because the thing that they knew crumbled away, broke apart, and that typically isn't an easy process. There's generally accompanying a lot of trauma. And so, but through trauma, when that thing happens, when the beliefs that you thought were true no longer hold their weight, and you can begin to question, why do I believe this? Because why are we going to ask ourselves, why do I believe this, if there isn't a reason to ask ourselves, right? So we're conformists. Like, we want to be comfortable and we stay in our box that we put ourselves in, but we're not going to try and look for a better solution if we don't think there's a better solution. So typically we know there's a better solution because something shitty happened to begin with. So when you approach it this way and you realize, look, if what I believe is simply a construct of what others have told me the way things are and my interpretation of them, really all life is a reflection of your memories. And so based on you, like, what's important for you, like based on you, like what drives you, based on, like, I'm kind of going off tangent now, but you like when something traumatic happens, it will often be the doorway for incredible change, because you don't just resolve that one thing that no longer holds its weight. Like for me, being able to like look at all these different beliefs that I have, from mannerisms to habits to reflexes to institutions to entire thought systems, learning to be the one that decides, look, is this what I actually believe? Is like, why do I believe it this way? What were the events in my life that validate or substantiate this or not this? So I don't know. I'm a problem solver. So I go deep, and I find that it works the same personally as it does in business. The more time you focus on something, the more energy that thing gets. Yeah, and it's you have to be careful what you focus on. I drift in between the two, but I'm doing my business myself, and I'm building it up. I find it quite difficult because I'm not natural with it, but you have to focus and go with it, and then it does bit by bit. You just get surprised, and it comes. But same with personal life. But I totally get you. But I go back just quickly before we finish there about the creativity as well and what it is you want. I think so many people are really, really genuinely scared of thinking for themselves, and I was brought up to think for myself actually quite forcefully. But that's why even with like learning techniques and different things, it's like, I've got to do it like this. And I'm teaching coaches now, and I'm like, no, what is it you want to do? We're here, let's make a meditation up right now. How'd you do that? It's a story. It's anything. You let it out. But there's a lot of fear in people to conform. And it's a mission on my life, if anything, to be like, no, really think for yourself and go about what is it you want? Whatever that may be, whatever that works. Take a tool, take a thing, but then change it, make it your own, and don't believe the old story. Totally. Beautiful stuff, man. We covered a lot. I love it. One or two questions, but you covered it. And a final thing there, I would say, so basically one piece of advice for someone that is suffering right now, that if they watch this and there's like something they can't quite get out of, what advice would you give them, even though there's plenty in there, but as a final thought? Yeah, to know that one, you're worth it, but two, that it's never too late to ask for help. That a lot of times we create judgments around, I can't ask for help because of this. Or we create a scenario of why we can't do something because it might be this way, when those are stories that we create. So just for someone that's suffering and that needs a piece of advice, actually, you've got to take your mind off it. So like what piece of advice would I give? You got to have a hobby. You got to have something that you can divert your attention to. Because look, if you're a drug addict, let's say for me, right? I loved cocaine. I would inject for so long, and I would go over and over and over and over and over. And so nothing was going to stop me from doing cocaine unless I had replaced it with something else. Well, unfortunately, somebody died and I went to jail. But as a result of that, I no longer do that, because now my attention is on doing business, is on my family, is on things that matter to me. Like, you have to have something that takes up that attention. And if it's an extreme addiction, then you gotta do something extreme likewise. You got to divert your attention. So the advice is, where focus goes, energy flows. And a lot of times we tend to see things polarized, right? Like, it's either yes or it's either no. We see it's either good or it's either bad. It's either hot, it's either cold. We live life through these parallel dichotomies. That where focus goes, energy flows. That if you think that you can't do it, consider just for a moment, and maybe that's just the idea that you tell yourself. So if you could try and flip that on yourself and say, well, if you can't, well, what if you can? That if you think that you're your worst enemy, what if you're your best friend? Yeah. And so, like, you've got to be the one. Nobody's gonna drop you on top of Everest. If you're interested in scaling Everest, you got to climb that bitch yourself, right? And so it's as daunting, as difficult as it may be, take it one day at a time. Make the decision today. Be resolute today. Be determined, dedicated, disciplined today. Do what needs to be done today, and congratulate yourself at the end of the day when you made it. Exactly. And if you didn't, and if you fell off, forgive yourself. It's okay. Guess what? Everyone fucks up. So if you fell off, then why did you fall off? Don't just take it in stride. Well, I'll be better tomorrow. You got to be practical here. So, like, why did you fall off? What were the influences that were going on that made you think your train of thought that put you back onto that? What were the stimulus that occurred that made you think that? How were you feeling? What contributed to this experience? And so if you can be honest with yourself of what were the contributing factors, I realize this takes a little bit of discipline, because a lot of times we're not willing to be open and honest with ourselves. It's really easy to pull the victim card. It's really easy to say, poor me. Really easy to say, it's not my fault. It just happened to me. Well, everything is your fault. From everything you do good to everything you do bad, because it's your intention, it's your willpower, it's your choice. It's all your fault. And when we can take accountability for all the good and all the bad, and not just the accountability of, oh shit, man, I fucked up, but no, the accountability of, okay, because it didn't work, no failure is a failure. Failure is not failure until you quit. Failure is a learning experience. You think Michael Jordan became the world's best basketball player because he just one day happened to be so? No, man, he failed a lot. He had to train a lot to be who he is, and to have the skill and the expertise that he has. Nobody just gets to where they're going. It takes practice. And so if you're battling with addiction right now, and it's got a strong hold on you, and you fuck up and you fail, and you think that, damn it, I fucked up today. Well, I'm going to go all in and keep going down the hill. I'll never be better. It's easy to tell ourselves those things, because we are the most critical about ourselves. Yeah. Right. So we judge ourselves because we think others judge us. And because we think others judge us, we create that whole experience of judgment. That, take it one day at a time. It's not as bad as you think it is. No matter how bad it is, I promise there's someone out there that's worse. Yep. Nothing as bad as you think it is. And you just take it one day at a time.
Absolutely perfect advice. Totally agree. Love it. Mate, it's amazing. We've covered so much. You really sure that story, as intense as it is, you've got a lot of wise words there. They're going to help people go through the other side if they're struggling or not. So amazing. I'm really, really happy that you accepted the invite, man. It's great. And the 7-day challenge, please just try it. It's nothing major, but it's to do with things we're talking about. Changing your story. A few little questions each day, a little meditation, make a video, and share that video. And if you could, it'd be great, because you've got something to say, and other people will be doing the same. So it'd be superb.
Cool. I'll try it out. I'll do it.
Also, I'll get it from you later, but maybe when you've finished the book, or if you have something now, I can put it in the links, and also the course you mentioned as well. I can just put it in the links in the YouTube.
Yeah. So these are things we're building. My book, we're about done. It's called Chasing the Devil. My course is not a thing yet. It's right now it's training systems and SOPs internally for our team that now we're trying to turn into a training system that we can give to people. So that's
Wow.
we're in the process of building that right now.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much. That was fucking amazing. And we'll speak
Thank
soon.
you so much.
Take care, mate. Ciao.
Yeah, you
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye.